Ethan dug through the loose red sand, sweat running down his forehead, stinging his eyes. The wind had begun to pick up again, carrying sharp grains that cut like needles against his skin. He worked quickly, reinforcing the walls of the small shelter he had built days ago. Sandstorms were frequent here, and the last thing he wanted was to be trapped in a collapsing pit with nowhere to hide. Each scoop of sand was heavy, but Ethan was determined. Survival on this desert world depended on vigilance and endurance, and he knew he had to stay one step ahead of nature itself. As he shoveled, his spade struck something harder than sand. Curious, he paused and knelt, brushing the grains away. His heart skipped a beat. Buried beneath the shifting sand was a figure, humanoid in shape, but unlike any human he had seen. The skin shimmered faintly, like polished metal under the sun, and the outline suggested delicate features beneath a thin, icy layer. Ethan froze, uncertain whether to feel awe, fear, or disbelief. He had encountered alien artifacts before, but a living, or at least recently living, being was something else entirely. Gently, he cleared more sand, revealing the creature's form. It lay completely still, cold to the touch, with arms folded slightly across its chest. Ethan could feel a faint pulse, barely perceptible but enough to convince him she was not dead. He carefully hoisted the figure into the shelter, careful not to jostle her. His hands shook slightly as he placed her on a reinforced cot he had built for himself. He had seen harsh desert conditions take lives in minutes, and something told him this being had already suffered enough. Ethan looked at her face, and it was like looking at a sculpture carved from moonlight. Her eyes were closed, her features smooth and delicate, and her skin caught the dim sunlight filtering through the shelter entrance. He wondered where she had come from, how long she had been buried, and why she was here at all. The desert didn't forgive mistakes, yet somehow this fragile alien life had survived. Hours passed, the storm outside rising to a deafening roar, and Ethan continued his work, reinforcing the shelter. Every so often, he glanced at the figure, half expecting her to vanish or dissolve into dust. But she remained. When he returned with a jug of water, he noticed her chest rising slightly. She was breathing. Relief washed over him. He knelt beside her and tried to wake her gently, brushing her hair back from her face. Suddenly, her eyes opened. They glowed faintly, like liquid amber catching fire in dim light. Ethan stumbled back, startled, his hands raised defensively. The alien's voice cut through the storm outside, sharp and commanding. "Fool! Now they'll find me!" Ethan's heart pounded. He had expected fear or confusion, but not anger. He stammered, I didn't know. I thought you were dead." The alien sat up slowly, her movements cautious but precise. She looked around, scanning the shelter, the sandstorm, and then back at him. "You have no idea what you've done," she said. Her voice carried authority and a strange musical quality, like a language he almost understood but didn't. "You exposed me. They will be here soon." Ethan swallowed hard. "They? Who? What do you mean?" Her eyes narrowed. "I am hunted. My people, my enemies. They will not stop until I am found. You are reckless, human, but you are alive, and that is fortunate." The wind howled louder, rattling the shelter's walls. Ethan knew the desert itself was dangerous, but now it seemed as if it had invited something even worse. The creature's presence filled the small room with tension. He wanted to ask more questions, but he sensed she expected immediate action. "I can help you," Ethan said finally, finding his voice. "I know how to survive here. I can make a better shelter, hide you from anyone searching, but I need you to trust me." The alien studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Very well. But one mistake, one misstep, and we will both die. I will not survive twice." Ethan exhaled, a mix of relief and apprehension coursing through him. He set to work, reinforcing the shelter further, sealing exits, and creating hidden storage spaces for food and water. He moved efficiently, his human ingenuity complementing the aliens' subtle guidance. Every action was calculated, every layer of sand placed with care, as if preparing not just for the storm, but for unseen pursuers. As hours passed, they worked together in silence. The alien, who eventually introduced herself as Lyra, showed him subtle ways to camouflage the shelter. Her knowledge of stealth and technology was unlike anything Ethan had encountered. She pointed out weak spots in the shelter's design, suggesting small modifications that would make it nearly invisible to scanning devices and thermal detection. Ethan listened carefully, impressed by her intellect and precise understanding of survival. Night fell, and the storm began to subside. The desert became eerily quiet, the silence broken only by distant groans of shifting sand. Ethan and Lyra shared a meager meal of preserved rations. He noticed that her hands moved with delicate precision, yet there was a strength beneath the surface, a quiet power that commanded respect. "I need to move soon," Lyra said, her voice low. "Staying here too long is dangerous. They will track me. I have been hunted across galaxies. You cannot imagine the forces against me." Ethan nodded. "I can handle the desert, but I don't know much about interstellar hunters." She tilted her head, studying him. "You are human. You survive because you adapt. You find solutions where others see only danger. That is unexpected. Perhaps that is why I am alive here, with you." The statement struck Ethan. Humans were often underestimated by alien civilizations, yet here he was, standing shoulder to shoulder with a being far more advanced than himself, and somehow, together, they survived. The night passed slowly. Ethan kept watch, listening for signs of movement beyond the shelter walls. He could hear the faint groaning of sand dunes settling, the distant echo of something massive moving in the distance, and every now and then a low hum in the air that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Lyra slept for short periods, curled carefully to conserve warmth, but she remained alert even in sleep, her senses far sharper than his own. By dawn, the storm had passed. The desert stretched endlessly, a vast expanse of red and gold under the rising sun. Ethan surveyed the terrain, noting potential routes of escape, places to hide, and landmarks to avoid. Lyra watched him silently, her expression unreadable. Yet he could sense her approval. "They will come soon," she said, breaking the quiet. "And they will not stop until they find me." Ethan tightened his grip on the tools he had fashioned as makeshift weapons. He had no idea what they would face, but he knew one thing. They had to work together. The desert had tested him his entire life, but now it was testing him in ways he could never have imagined. Hours later, strange shadows appeared on the horizon, barely visible through the morning heat. Ethan squinted, trying to make out shapes, but they seemed to shimmer and shift with the mirage of the desert. Lyra tensed beside him, her eyes glowing faintly. "They are close," she whispered. "We must move." Ethan nodded. With careful steps, they left the shelter, moving quickly but quietly. The desert was unforgiving, each step sinking into the soft sand. Ethan's mind raced, calculating the fastest and safest route, while Lyra guided him with knowledge of terrain and alien tracking methods. As they advanced, a low rumble shook the ground. Ethan glanced back and his stomach dropped. Shadows moved with purpose, unnatural in speed and coordination. He realized they were being pursued not just by nature, but by something far more organized, far more dangerous than he had anticipated. "Stay close," Lyra hissed. "We must reach the canyon. It will provide cover, and they cannot follow us easily there." Together they ran across the open desert, the sun blazing overhead, hearts pounding. Ethan's training, endurance, and human determination pushed him forward, while Lyra's alien agility kept them moving efficiently. Every second counted. Every misstep could mean death. As they reached the mouth of the canyon, Ethan paused, breathing heavily. Lyra scanned the horizon. "We are safe, for now," she said. "But we cannot remain here. They will track us. We must plan our next move carefully. Your ingenuity, it may save us both." Ethan swallowed. He had no idea what lay ahead, only that survival depended on cleverness, courage, and trust. And he knew, for the first time, that humanity, despite its limitations, could stand toe-to-toe with forces far beyond its comprehension, if only it used its mind and heart together. As the canyon swallowed their figures, the desert wind howled behind them, carrying the echoes of pursuit and the promise of challenges yet to come. And for the first time, Ethan realized that saving an alien life might just change the course of his own. Ethan and Lyra moved carefully through the canyon, each step measured to avoid loose rocks that might give away their position. The sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the jagged walls, and the desert heat pressed down on them like a heavy weight. Ethan's chest burned from exertion, but adrenaline pushed him forward. Lyra moved beside him with quiet precision, her senses alert for any sign of their pursuers. Even though she was stronger and faster than him, she seemed impressed by his stamina and determination. "They are not far behind," Lyra said in a low voice, her eyes scanning the canyon entrance. "They will adapt quickly. We must not make mistakes." Ethan nodded. "Then we keep moving. We find high ground and watch the path. Maybe we can outsmart them." The canyon twisted and turned, its walls forming natural traps and blind corners. Ethan began thinking like a predator, analyzing how the shadows fell and where they could hide. Every small detail could mean the difference between survival and being captured. Lyra followed his lead, though she occasionally whispered instructions on where to step and how to avoid leaving traces in the sand. Hours passed. They had climbed several ridges, and Ethan's arms ached from pulling himself over rocky outcrops. Yet the danger kept him alert. He could hear faint sounds behind them, a scraping, a subtle vibration in the ground. Whoever was pursuing them was not far, and Ethan realized these hunters were intelligent and organized. They were not merely searching, they were strategizing. "They expect us to panic," Lyra whispered. "We must not. That is our advantage." Ethan gritted his teeth. Humans were not the fastest species, nor the strongest, but they had an unpredictable quality that often worked in their favor: creativity. He glanced at the canyon walls, noticing a series of narrow passages. With careful planning, they could force the hunters to follow them through the tight paths, limiting the advantage of speed and numbers. "Follow me," Ethan said, pointing to a steep, twisting path that climbed toward a ridge. "It's narrow, they can't move quickly here. We can hold them off if needed." Lyra studied the path, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she nodded. Risky, but it could work. Human ingenuity. Perhaps you are correct. Together, they scrambled up the rocky slope, careful not to make noise. Ethan's hands were raw from gripping the stone, but he pushed onward, the thought of capture far worse than the pain. Lyra moved effortlessly beside him, her alien physiology allowing her to cling to surfaces with minimal effort. Even so, she remained patient, letting Ethan find his rhythm. Once they reached the top, they paused. The canyon stretched below them, a maze of stone and sand. Ethan surveyed the landscape. In the distance, he could see faint movements, shapes shifting against the desert's heat haze. The hunters were approaching, and they were coming faster than he expected. "We need a plan," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "We can't outrun them forever, but maybe we can make them think we have gone one way while we escape another." Lyra's eyes gleamed. Deception. Humans. Yes. You are clever. We will need to create a diversion. Ethan scanned their surroundings. He noticed loose boulders near the cliff edge. With careful timing, they could roll them to create noise and dust, drawing the hunters' attention while they slipped away. Lyra agreed, and they worked silently, setting the trap. Ethan pushed the first boulder, then the second, and the sound echoed through the canyon like thunder. A cloud of dust rose from below, and Ethan saw movement in the distance, figures hesitating, uncertain. Now, Lyra said. They sprinted in the opposite direction, using narrow ridges and hidden paths to put distance between themselves and the distracted pursuers. Ethan felt exhilaration and fear at the same time. They were surviving, but only just. Every second counted. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the canyon floor. Ethan found a hidden crevice and signaled for Lyra to follow. Inside, the air was cooler, and they could rest for a moment without fear of being seen. Both were breathing heavily, but Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment. They had survived this encounter, relying on human cleverness and alien skill combined. Lyra finally spoke, her voice softer than before. You are impressive, human. I have seen many species, but your adaptability, it is remarkable. I underestimated humans. Ethan smiled faintly, though exhaustion weighed on him. We survive by thinking, not by being strongest. You taught me that too. Without your help, I would not have lasted this long. Lyra studied him, then nodded. We will need more than luck to survive the night. The desert is unforgiving, and they will not give up. I can help, but you must continue to think, plan, and act. Night fell fully, and the desert became quiet except for the occasional shift of sand and distant cries of nocturnal predators. Ethan and Lyra made a small camp within the crevice, using reflective blankets to preserve warmth. Ethan shared water and a few rations with her, noticing the faint shimmer of her skin under the dim light. It was mesmerizing, but he kept his focus on survival. Hours passed. Ethan took the first watch, eyes scanning the horizon. The desert was vast, but the hunters were clever. He knew they would search every ridge, every canyon, and every crevice until they found Lyra. He adjusted the positioning of rocks and sand near the entrance to obscure tracks and create false trails. Every detail mattered. When Lyra took her watch, she demonstrated subtle methods of sensing vibrations in the ground and detecting distant movement. Ethan marveled at her ability to read the terrain in ways no human could. Yet he saw how his own creative strategies complemented her skills. Together they formed a combination neither the desert nor their pursuers could easily anticipate. As the second night wore on, Lyra spoke of her past. She had once belonged to a highly advanced civilization, but a faction within her empire had turned against her, seeking her for reasons she could not fully explain. Ethan listened carefully, noting the parallels between her story and countless human struggles for survival. Despite the differences in species, the challenges of evasion, strategy, and courage were universal. By dawn, they moved again, taking careful steps through narrow canyon paths. Ethan's mind worked constantly, predicting where the hunters might go, devising escape routes, and considering contingencies. Lyra followed his lead, yet occasionally offered insights that helped avoid detection. The partnership was growing, built on trust, necessity, and mutual respect. Around mid-morning, they reached a plateau overlooking the desert. Ethan could see the path ahead clearly, and for the first time, he believed they had a real chance at escaping. Lyra's eyes widened slightly as she surveyed the area. "We can use this," she said. "From here, we can mislead them completely. The desert will become an ally." Ethan nodded, formulating a plan. Using sand, rocks, and makeshift decoys, they created multiple false trails leading in different directions. Each trap was designed to delay the hunters and buy them precious time. As the sun climbed higher, heat shimmered across the landscape, further obscuring their movements. Their pursuers appeared in the distance, moving swiftly but hesitating at the first signs of the traps. Ethan's plan worked better than he had hoped. The hunters split up, chasing false leads, while he and Lyra slipped away, moving toward a hidden canyon network that Lyra had discovered earlier. Hours later, exhausted but undetected, they reached a narrow cave system. Inside, the temperature dropped and the air was calm. Ethan allowed himself a moment to catch his breath. Lyra looked at him, her eyes softening for the first time. "You have done well," she said. "Humans. Perhaps there is more strength in your species than I realized." Ethan smiled faintly. "It's not strength that matters. It's thinking, adapting, and never giving up." "You've seen that tonight." Lyra nodded. "Yes, and perhaps that is why I am still alive. You may be a simple human, but you are clever, and that makes you dangerous to those who underestimate you." They settled in the cave for the night. Ethan kept watch, but for the first time, he felt a sense of hope. The desert was still dangerous, and the hunters would not give up. But he now knew that humans, with their resourcefulness and courage, could survive even against far superior forces. By morning, they had a plan to leave the canyon completely, using a combination of stealth, diversion, and terrain advantage. Ethan's mind was sharp, calculating each move, while Lyra's alien skills ensured they remained undetected. Together, they were no longer just survivors. They were a team, capable of facing threats far beyond the ordinary. As they stepped out into the desert, the horizon stretching endlessly before them, Ethan realized something important. Humanity was underestimated in the galaxy not because of weakness, but because of ingenuity, creativity, and the courage to face impossible odds. Tonight, that courage had kept them alive. Tomorrow, it would take them further than they had ever imagined. And with Lyra by his side, he understood that survival was only the beginning. Together they could outthink, outlast, and outmaneuver any force that dared to challenge them. The desert wind carried the promise of future trials, but also the knowledge that human ingenuity could shine, even in the darkest, most dangerous places in the galaxy. Ethan took a deep breath, scanning the endless dunes. Lyra moved beside him, her presence a reminder of what they had achieved. "We will survive," he said, more to himself than to her, "and we will be stronger for it." Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes, human, we will survive, and perhaps one day your people will surprise the galaxy in ways even I cannot imagine." As they disappeared into the heat waves of the desert, the hunters continued their futile search behind them, unaware that the humans' cleverness and determination had already outmatched them. Ethan felt a surge of pride, not arrogance, but quiet certainty. Humanity, with its flaws and limitations, had a spark that could shine even across the stars. And in that moment, amidst the shifting sands and the endless sky, he realized the truth. Humans could survive anywhere, outthink anyone, and protect those who could not protect themselves. That spark, the spark of ingenuity, courage, and resilience, was what made them truly dangerous. The desert stretched on, but for the first time, Ethan felt that he and Lyra were not alone in facing it. Together, human and alien, they would navigate the challenges ahead. And the galaxy would have to take notice of the species that never gave up, no matter the odds.